My name is Mavis M. Phillips, and I was 31 years old when my boyfriend told me that our 3-year relationship had only been a temporary stage in his real love story. His name was Ethan Carter. For 3 years, I was the reliable one, the planner, the provider, the woman who kept everything from collapsing while he chased the dream of becoming a professional photographer. When we met, I worked as a network administrator for a mid-sized company. Ethan was serving coffee during the day and taking photographs whenever he could afford film, equipment, or transportation. He had an extraordinary eye. He could capture loneliness in an empty train station or tenderness in the hands of an elderly couple. I believed in him before anyone else did. When he said he needed to live closer to the city, I found a better job and arranged the move. When the rent proved higher than expected, I began doing freelance technology work on weekends. I told myself it was temporary. One day, his career would take off, and all the sacrifices would feel worthwhile. At first, Ethan seemed grateful. Then Vanessa Hale returned to his life. She was his ex-girlfriend and another photographer. He had met her years before me. But according to him, they had remained creative friends. Her name began appearing in every conversation. Vanessa says real artists shouldn't have office jobs, Ethan told me one night. She says you either live for your work, or you're only pretending. I smiled, trying to make the comment harmless. It's fortunate one of us has an office job. The landlord doesn't accept artistic passion as rent. Ethan did not laugh. He stared at me with an expression I had never seen before, part disappointment, part embarrassment. She lives in a converted warehouse, he continued. Her entire life is art. She understands what creative people need. The comparisons multiplied. Vanessa traveled. I preferred staying home. Vanessa followed instinct. I made plans. Vanessa was fearless. I was safe. The word safe slowly stopped sounding like praise. Ethan became protective of his phone. He kept it face down and carried it from room to room. Whenever I entered unexpectedly, his fingers moved quickly across the screen before he locked it. I asked him directly whether something was wrong. He released a dramatic sigh. You're overthinking again, Mavis. I'm finally making useful connections. I need support, not suspicion. So I apologized. That was the worst part. I apologized for noticing the truth. Weeks later, Ethan came home carrying his camera bag and a decision. He placed the bag on the kitchen counter but did not kiss me. The apartment became painfully quiet. What happened? I asked. This isn't working. My stomach tightened. What isn't working? Us. We can talk about it. It isn't something we can repair? His expression was strangely calm, almost professional. Then he said, I've been in love with someone else this whole time. The room seemed to tilt. Vanessa? Yes. The answer came too quickly. Ethan began explaining that our relationship had been a stage he needed to pass through. He said I had given him stability while he found himself, but Vanessa understood his soul. You're kind, he said. You're dependable. But you're a rock, Mavis. I need someone who moves. I stared at him. Every extra shift, every bill I had paid, every dinner kept warm while he attended gallery events. It had all been reduced to a convenient stage. Vanessa and I have a cosmic connection, he continued. I'm sorry you couldn't give me what I needed. He was watching me closely, waiting for tears, waiting for me to beg him to reconsider. Instead, something inside me became cold and clear. Okay. His rehearsed expression disappeared. What? I said okay. I walked into the bedroom and began packing. Not angrily, methodically. Shirts folded, documents gathered, books placed into boxes. Ethan stood in the doorway after nearly an hour. You're actually leaving? I zipped the final bag. You're not going to fight for us? I looked at the man I had supported for 3 years. There was nothing left to fight for, because he had just admitted that, in his mind, there had never truly been an us. I picked up my keys and walked toward the door. Mavis, he called. You can't just disappear. I paused only long enough to answer. You already erased me, Ethan. Then I stepped into the hallway and closed the door. I did not know it yet, but 6 months later, Vanessa would erase him just as easily. And when that happened, Ethan would come looking for the rock he had thrown away. The first few weeks after leaving Ethan felt less like freedom and more like surviving a quiet disaster. My new apartment was smaller than the one we had shared. The walls were white, the floors were bare, and every room seemed to echo. I had brought only what belonged to me, which meant there were no framed photographs, no expensive camera equipment, and no carefully arranged shelves designed around someone else's ambitions. At first, the emptiness hurt. Then it began to feel honest. I stopped checking whether Ethan had called. I stopped wondering whether Vanessa had already moved into our old apartment. I refused to look at either of their social media accounts because I knew every photograph would be carefully staged to prove that leaving me had been the beginning of something beautiful. Instead, I rebuilt. I accepted more freelance technology work, but this time, I chose projects I actually enjoyed. I began assembling custom computers for designers, musicians, and small businesses. The work was precise, challenging, and mine. I started running again. Years earlier, before Ethan's schedule consumed everything, I used to run every morning. Returning to it felt like meeting an old version of myself on an empty road. With every mile, the anger became quieter. I reconnected with friends I had neglected because Ethan always needed help preparing for an exhibit, editing a portfolio, or recovering from another professional disappointment. My life became mine again, one decision at a time. 6 months passed. One evening, I met my friend David for a drink. He still knew people in Ethan's photography circle, but he had never tried to pressure me into forgiving anyone. "You look different," he said. "Better or worse?" "Better. Calmer." "I am calmer." David turned his beer bottle slowly between his hands. "You haven't heard from Ethan?" "No." He hesitated. "What?" "Vanessa got engaged." For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. "To Ethan?" "No." The answer came gently. "She met a man during a photography assignment in Los Angeles. Apparently, they became serious almost immediately. She announced the engagement last week." I absorbed the information without the satisfaction I expected. "What happened to Ethan?" "Vanessa blocked him." David leaned closer. "She used his local contacts to get access to galleries and clients. Once she got what she wanted, she disappeared. Ethan found out about the engagement online." The irony was almost too perfect. Ethan had treated me as a temporary foundation while he waited for Vanessa. Vanessa had treated him as a temporary connection while she waited for something better. "He's telling people she manipulated him," David continued. "He says she never loved him." I looked down at my drink. "That must be difficult." David studied my face. "That's all? What else should I say?" "I thought you might feel vindicated." "I don't." And I meant it. Ethan's pain did not repair mine. It only confirmed that the grand love story he used to erase me had never existed. A week later, the first message arrived. "Hey, I hope you're doing well." I stared at it for several seconds. There was no apology, no acknowledgement, only a cautious attempt to see whether the door was still open. I deleted it. 3 days later, another message came. "I've been thinking about you." Then, "I miss our conversations." I blocked the number. He called from another one. His voicemail was long and unsteady. "Mavis, I know I made a terrible mistake. Vanessa wasn't who I thought she was. I understand now how much you did for me. Please call me. I just need to hear your voice." I deleted that too. The messages became increasingly desperate. "You were right about everything." I was confused. "I need my best friend." That final sentence angered me more than the rest. I had not been his best friend when he called our relationship a stage. I had been infrastructure. Now that his fantasy had collapsed, he wanted the reliable system back online. His friend Melissa called next. "Mavis, Ethan is falling apart." "That is unfortunate. He needs someone who knows him. He has friends and family. You were always the person who could calm him down." That was before he told me I was never the person he loved. Melissa sighed. "People make mistakes." "Yes." Can't you forgive him? Forgiveness does not mean access. Her tone changed. You're being cold. No, I'm protecting the life I had to rebuild after he destroyed the old one. I ended the call and blocked her. That evening, Ethan's mother sent me a long message. She reminded me that he was sensitive, that creative people sometimes became confused, and that I had always been the practical one. In other words, I was expected to repair what everyone else was tired of managing. I put my phone down and went for a run. When I returned, I deleted her message. Ethan had once told me I was a rock. He had meant boring, immovable, and useful. Now he wanted that rock beneath him because the ground Vanessa promised had vanished. But I was no longer standing where he left me. And he was about to learn that regret could not rebuild a bridge he had burned without looking back. For a while, I believed blocking Ethan would be enough. It was not. He simply changed methods. When direct messages stopped reaching me, he began posting publicly. At first, the posts were vague enough to look philosophical. Sometimes people abandon you when you are at your lowest. Then, some people only love you when you are useful to them. The hypocrisy was almost impressive. Ethan posted an old photograph of us taken during our first year together. We were standing outside a small cafe, his arm around my waist, both of us smiling at a future I had believed was real. His caption read, "I miss what was genuine." Friends began sending me screenshots. I asked them to stop. I did not want to watch Ethan rewrite history in real time. To him, our relationship had suddenly become genuine because Vanessa no longer wanted him. My loyalty had gained value only after he lost access to it. He sent another email to my work address. Mavis, I know you see these messages. I'm not asking you to take me back immediately. I just want one conversation. You owe me that after 3 years. That word again. Oh. I had relocated for him, worked weekends for him, and financed the life that allowed him to call himself an artist. Yet somehow, in Ethan's mind, I remained the person carrying the debt. I archived the email without answering. My own life continued expanding. The custom computer work I had started as a side business became unexpectedly successful. One client recommended me to a graphic design studio. That studio referred me to a small animation company. Soon, I was spending evenings in the workshop I had created in my spare bedroom, surrounded by components, cables, and half-built machines. The work made sense. A system either functioned or it did not. There were no hidden messages, shifting loyalties, or dramatic speeches about cosmic connections. I also became closer to Daniel Mercer, a software consultant I met through one of my clients. He was patient, observant, and quietly funny. Our first conversation lasted nearly 2 hours because we disagreed about whether an expensive processor was worth the cost for the system I was building. He respected my opinion even while challenging it. That alone felt unfamiliar. Ethan had listened only when my words supported what he already wanted. Daniel listened because he was interested in what I thought. We began meeting for coffee after work. I did not tell Ethan. I did not post photographs. My healing was not a performance. But someone must have seen Daniel and me together because Ethan's next message arrived with a different tone. So there's someone else now? I deleted it. Another followed. Were you seeing him before we ended? The accusation almost made me laugh. Ethan could not accept that I had built a life after him. It was easier to imagine betrayal than to admit I had simply moved forward. Then Melissa called from another number. I nearly hung up when I recognized her voice. Please don't, she said quickly. I'm not calling to pressure you. Then why are you calling? She hesitated. Ethan is getting worse. That is something his family should address. He's drinking. He lost 2 clients. He stopped submitting work. I'm sorry to hear that. He saw you with someone. That is none of his business. Melissa's voice became tense. He thinks you replaced him. He replaced me before he ended our relationship. He knows he was wrong. Knowing he was wrong does not make me responsible for fixing him. There was silence. Then she said softly, You really don't love him anymore. I looked around my apartment, at the workshop I had built, at my running shoes near the door. at the life that no longer required me to shrink. No, I said. I don't. After the call, I sat quietly for several minutes. Saying it aloud did not hurt. That was how I knew it was true. Ethan's mother contacted me again the following week. Her message was less polite this time. You know how fragile he is. I cannot understand how you can be so cruel after claiming to love him. I typed a reply, then erased it. I wanted to explain that love did not mean volunteering to be destroyed repeatedly. I wanted to remind her that her son had looked me in the eyes and called our relationship a stage. But explanations were only useful when the other person wanted to understand. I blocked her too. Daniel noticed that I seemed distracted during dinner that evening. Is everything okay? My ex keeps trying to return. He did not tense or interrogate me. Do you want to talk about it? No. Okay. That simple response affected me more than I expected. No pressure, no suspicion, no demand that I manage his insecurity. Later, as he walked me home, Daniel stopped outside my building. I like you, Mavis, he said, but I don't want to rush you. I like you too. We can move slowly. I smiled. I'd like that. He kissed my cheek and left. I stood in the lobby afterward, realizing how peaceful affection could feel when it was not mixed with obligation. 2 nights later, Ethan sent his final message before appearing in person. I know where you live. We need to finish this face to face. For the first time, I felt uneasy. I checked the locks, informed the building manager, and told Daniel and David what had happened. Then I waited. On Friday night, while I was alone in my apartment, someone began pounding on my door. Not knocking. Pounding. I looked through the peephole. Ethan stood in the hallway. His hair was unwashed. His clothes were wrinkled. His eyes were red and frantic. He raised his fist and struck the door again. Mavis, he called. I know you're in there. The man outside looked nothing like the confident photographer who had told me I was merely a stage in his life. He looked broken. And he had come expecting the woman he discarded to put him back together. I kept the chain secured and opened the door only a few inches. Ethan looked through the narrow gap, breathing hard as if he had climbed several flights of stairs. Mavis, he said. Please let me in. No. His face tightened. I came all this way. I did not ask you to. He glanced past me, trying to see inside the apartment. The place was larger than the one we had shared. The walls were painted charcoal gray, the furniture was clean and comfortable, and the warm light from my workshop spilled into the hallway. It was a life he had never touched. His eyes moved over the framed photographs from my hiking trips, and the shelves filled with books I had chosen for myself. You really live here now, he whispered. Yes. With him? No. The relief on his face was immediate and insulting. Then we still have a chance. No, Ethan. His expression collapsed. You won't even hear me out? I have heard you for months. Messages are not the same. They were enough. He placed one hand against the door. Vanessa was a lie. No, I said. Vanessa was the truth. He stared at me. She was what you chose when you decided our relationship was only a stage. She was the life you said you truly wanted. She used me. I know. She never loved me. I know. His voice cracked. She got engaged to someone else. That does not change what you did to me. Ethan wiped both hands over his face. I was confused. I thought passion was supposed to feel dangerous. I thought you were holding me back. I paid the rent that gave you time to build your portfolio. I know that now. I moved cities for you. I know. I worked weekends while you traveled to gallery events with your ex-girlfriend. His eyes dropped. I know. Each confession sounded less like accountability and more like a list of things he wanted returned. You were my home, he said. No. I was your safety net. That is not true. Then why did you come back only after Vanessa discarded you? He opened his mouth but said nothing. The hallway became silent. For the first time, Ethan seemed to understand that there was no sentence powerful enough to reverse 6 months of absence. I miss you, he whispered. You miss the version of me who solved your problems. I miss everything. You called everything we had temporary. I was trying to convince myself. And you succeeded. Tears gathered in his eyes. I made the worst mistake of my life. That may be true. Then how can you stand there so calmly? Because your mistake is no longer my emergency. He recoiled as if I had slapped him. I'm falling apart. Then call a therapist. Call your mother. Call Melissa. But do not come here expecting me to rebuild you. You were always the strong one. That is why you assumed I could survive anything you did. His face crumpled. Mavis, please. I have nothing left. For one brief moment, I remembered the man I had loved, the one who used to photograph morning light through our kitchen window, the one who once held my face and promised that my faith in him would never be wasted. But that man existed only in memory. The person standing outside my door had erased me while expecting me to remain available for his return. You have yourself, I said. That is where I had to start. I don't know how. Neither did I. His hand slid away from the door. So this is punishment? No. You want me to suffer because you suffered. I do not want anything from you. That answer hurt him more than anger would have. His eyes searched my face for the old tenderness, but there was nothing left for him to find. I am not the woman you abandoned, I said. She is gone. What happened to her? You happened. He flinched. And then she learned she could build a life without you. A soft sound came from behind me. Daniel stood near the hallway entrance, not approaching, not interfering. He had come because I texted him after Ethan began pounding on the door. Ethan noticed him. So that's him. That is Daniel. You said you lived alone. I do. Ethan gave a bitter laugh. You replaced me. No, people are not furniture. He stared at Daniel, waiting for confrontation. Daniel remained silent. That calm seemed to make Ethan feel even smaller. You really chose him? I did not choose Daniel over you. Ethan looked back at me. I chose myself after you made it clear I was optional. His shoulders sagged. Is there anything I can do? Yes. Hope flashed across his face. Leave. The hope disappeared. I began closing the door. Mavis. I paused. I am sorry, he said. For the first time, the words sounded sincere. I believed he regretted what he had done, but regret did not rebuild trust. I hope you become someone who never does this to another person, I said. Then I shut the door. The lock clicked softly. There was no shouting from the hallway. No final accusation. Only footsteps moving slowly toward the elevator. Daniel waited until the sound disappeared. Are you okay? I looked around the apartment I had built from the wreckage of the life Ethan dismissed. The workshop hummed softly. My running shoes rested by the door. A half-finished computer sat on the desk, waiting for me to return to it. Yes, I said. I am. Months later, I heard Ethan had started therapy and moved to another city. I felt no satisfaction, only distance. He became what the past should eventually become. A lesson without power. Ethan once told me I was a temporary stage in his life. He was wrong. I had been the foundation. But when he tore it apart, I discovered I could build again. This time, I built something that belonged entirely to me. And no one would ever convince me that being dependable made me less worthy of love.